What if I told you there's a manga that can tell you exactly when and what disasters will happen in the future? A manga that's predicted many events accurately decades in advance. 15 events in total, and 12 of them came true. Would you believe me? Well, there really is such a mystical manga. Let me also tell you that the next upcoming catastrophe as prophesied in the manga is something big that's gonna happen this year. We even have the date, July 5th, 2025. The name of the manga is The Future I Saw, and this manga artist was not famous at all. This was the last book she published before going into retirement in July 1999. This manga was more like her dream journal instead of a fictional story. But because it accurately predicted the March 11th Tohoku earthquake in 2011, the manga's popularity soared overnight, and volumes of this manga started getting sold for 100,000 yen at auctions. It was practically impossible to get a copy. That is, until the last few years it got republished and I finally managed to get myself one. If you look closely at the cover at all these tickets, it details all the predictions with the date and year. It's by Ryo Tatsuki, basically Japan's Baba Vanga, and she successfully predicted many different events from deaths to natural disasters. But before we discuss something that may or may not happen in the next month, let's first talk about all the other predictions she made that actually came true in her manga. In one of the first few opening chapters of the manga, she first realized she had these prophetic dream abilities when she walked past a spot near her home in Japan. She later had a dream about a girl sitting in that exact spot crying. Days after the dream, she saw in the news report that a girl's life had been brutally ended right there. She started recording her dreams in a journal, which evolved into the manga. In 1976 and in 1981, she dreamt about the death of her best friend's favorite rock star, Freddie Mercury. She noted in her diary that he would die exactly 10 to 15 years later. And guess what? He did. Mercury died on November 24, 1991. To add on to this, she also knew in advance that they would make a film to honor the rock star. This also came true in 2018 when the film Bohemian Rhapsody was released to honor Freddie Mercury. But this isn't the only death she foresaw in her dreams. On August 31, 1992, she had a dream that made her question if Princess Diana is dead. Well, on August 31, 1997, Princess Diana died. The princess died on the exact same date of her dream 5 years later. What's interesting is that she doesn't actually see the concrete day of her predictions in her dreams. Oftentimes, she can see only the year and month, but she jots down the day she has the dream into her journal, which then becomes the day of the prediction, just like in Princess Diana's case. Now, on January 2, 1995, the author predicted that an earthquake was going to strike Kobe in either 15 days or 15 years. Surprisingly, the Great Hanshin earthquake struck Kobe just 15 days after her prediction. In fact, some people had already evacuated the danger zones on January 17, 1995, thanks to her prediction. And of course, there was the March 2011 disaster. Would you believe me if I said she dreamt about it on March 11, 1996, and it happened on March 11, 2011? It happened on the same date, 15 years later. Next, let's talk about a dream she had in 1995. She had a dream about an unknown virus, and so she wrote in her diary that in 25 years, an unknown virus will come in 2020, will disappear after peaking in April, and appear again 10 years later. And as we all know, 2020 is when the COVID-19 pandemic took off. And then in April of the next year, the number of recorded cases peaked. Ultimately, things went back to normal, but if we're to take Ryo's word for it, then it appears that the virus is going to make a comeback in 10 years. This prediction about the pandemic was another reason why her manga became popular again in 2020. Now, let's fast forward back to the present, as we look to July 5th, 2025, the exact date and year of the catastrophe given by the author. And the question remains the same. Will Ryo Tatsuki's July 2025 prediction come true? It all began in the year 1998. Ryo went on a trip to India and had a dream about a great natural disaster that would disrupt the world. The vision in her dream showed her that the waters of the Pacific Ocean beyond the southern coast of Japan would start rising up like how bubbles rise up when you gradually boil water. She's not sure if this would be because of an undersea volcano or some explosive weapon. She couldn't tell the exact time, but in her dream, people were wearing short sleeves, so she deduced it was sometime in summer. Now the thing is, she dreamt about the same disaster again in 2021. On July 5th, 2021, right before the deadline of the complete and renewed version of her manga, Ryo had a dream about the same disaster, but this dream was much more climactic. She basically saw black text in her dream that pretty much translates to the following words: "The real catastrophe will come in July 2025. Ryo elaborated that in her dream, she was looking at Earth from the sky, like an outer space perspective, and she saw the ocean floor between Japan and the Philippines burst with a bang. Naturally, the bang resulted in massive waves that spread in all directions. The waves then transformed into a tsunami that would definitely affect Japan, the Philippines, Indonesia, Taiwan, mainland China, Guam, Palau, and South Korea. She even saw that a new land emerged from below the scene, connecting some of the countries. In between those two dreams, she also dreamt of what would happen after this incoming disaster, back on January 1st, 2001. There wasn't much she saw, but she knew for sure that the world is going to become better after this disaster. In her own words, there will be an age of mind after July 2025, where the world is more cooperative and connected than ever before. What's also interesting is that the author said she dreamt of her own funeral. She knew the date, and it would be sometime in July, but she doesn't know the year. In this dream, she knew it was somewhere in Yokohama, Japan, her hometown. She's mentioned before that she thinks her death will happen during the July 2025 disaster, and that her funeral will be right after the disaster. Her manga became known amongst the public as the Phantom Prophetic Manga. The most prominent prediction she made in her manga was the March 11 devastating earthquake in the Tohoku region. It led to tens of thousands of deaths, and there was also the accident at the Fukushima nuclear power plant. The OG version of the manga was published in 1999, and when it came true in 2011, the publisher was no longer around, and the media couldn't contact the author. So an imposter eventually appeared and claimed to be the author, and even made a deal to release a new book. This imposter started making random predictions like how Mount Fuji will explode. The real author had no idea until her granddaughter saw in the news that this manga was going to be republished and renewed. Her granddaughter then asked the author herself about this. Only then, she knew someone was impostoring her. She contacted people in the media and proved that she is the real Ryo Tatsuki. She proved it using her tax documents, and the imposter, who was a middle-aged man, was ousted. In the end, because the publishing deal was such a huge matter involving big companies with a lot of publicity, they kinda can't just say to the public they're no longer releasing the book. So the real author decided to go along with republishing the manga, adding in more prophecies she saw throughout the years, changed the cover, and successfully republished. So the cover illustration of her manga featured a young woman based on herself surrounded by pieces of white papers full of illustrations, which had the date and year of her predictions. But you know what else she changed about the cover in the newly republished version? In the original cover, it featured herself with one eye crying, but she deliberately changed the new cover to her one eye no longer crying. This is because she wanted to give people a more hopeful outlook towards the future, as her perception has also changed over the years. This manga has been made popular by the media, even more so this year, since the date is fast approaching. Some say the catastrophe is cancelled, and some still believe it. But what's true is that a lot of superstitious travelers have halted their travel plans to Japan this year. So what do you think? I'd say only time will tell.